presentations on Satanism. It's a look at the Church of Satan. And just some general disclaimers. The Satanic Bible, I want to put a brief note in there, but in here about this. I, against Pastor Huebner's recommendation, read it cover to cover. And if I had to say anything about it, it's definitely a in-depth book that you can't really compare to anything else. It's got logical fallacies out of this world. It's got, it's extremely logical, and it's got a lot of psychological understanding, and I would strongly recommend it to nobody. Anybody at all. Like, if there's anything I've learned from this, it's that your pastor doesn't always, or isn't really stupid. He does know what he's talking about. Because when Huebner told me not to read it, I laughed. I'm like, geez, I've been raised a Lutheran 18 years. What's one book going to do? More than you would think. I read this book looking for logical fallacies, and I was looking for this stuff, and I found it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that was an interesting book. And yet 2 days after, I found myself quoting it and using it in my logical reasoning. So unless you spent 4 years at the seminary and another 17 pastoring, try not to get near this book. All right. That being said, teaching methods. A lot of you have done this. The founder, general beliefs, the appeals and the differences, and then the quiz. It's going to be similar to that. I'm going to start with the founder and then go into their beliefs, but I'm not going to spend a whole slide on the differences between this and Christianity, because that's basically everything. Satanism is the opposite of Christianity. So instead, we're going to be talking about the appeals and the differences as we go through. That being said, since it is kind of a really deep topic, if you have any questions, don't save them till the end, because either A, you're going to keep focus on me and lose the question, or B, keep focus on the question and lose me. So feel free to just raise your hand. I'll answer any questions throughout. And yeah, let's delve into it. Some preliminary definitions. LaVeyan Satanism is the modern day Satanism. It's what the Church of Satan believes in. And it's basically what I'm going to teach you here. So anytime I refer to Satanism, it's going to be LaVeyan Satanism. Pseudo-Satanism, or pseudo-Satanists, are people who claim to worship Satan and claim to be Satanists, but really aren't. They'd be like, for instance, worshiping the deity, trying to get possessed by the devil, stuff like that. And usually when you hear about things about like Satanists or a cult of Satanists in the news, it's going to be these pseudo-Satanists, not actual true Satanists. Satan is, in this religion, not a spiritual entity. It is an idea that represents a number of different things, which we will be talking about with the 9 satanic statements. And white light religions is basically everything else except Satanism, so Christianity would be included in that. Different cults, even though they practice black magic, would be considered white light religions. I don't even know if I have that anywhere else in this presentation, but just so you know, it's a fun fact. Alright, Anton Stender LaVey. He's the Black Pope. He's the founder of Satanism. Born in Chicago in 1930, and shortly thereafter moved to California with his parents, and California at the time was a place where a lot of the drugs were happening, a lot of the different cults, and many different types of people were all in one place at one time, so he was exposed to a lot of stuff. He learned about superstitions from his European grandmother, who was very much into the cult and stuff. And this made him become absorbed in dark literature like Dracula and Frankenstein, horror, and other science fiction stories. And from there, he became more interested in the occult. He was very musically gifted. He played at carnivals, bars, lounges, and nightclubs. And one of the things that he noticed was how different musical chord progressions or different notes drew the different audience responses. So he used to experiment with that and watch people really closely, which became a huge part of what he did. When he was young, he had a lot of odd interests and became an outsider from the groups. Like, he was interested in the stuff that wasn't in the mainstream, you know, like being interested in math when everyone else is a football geek, effectively. That's kind of where he was. So he quickly became an outsider, but unlike others, he didn't try and become one of the in crowd. He just did what he wanted. He would cut classes to follow his own interests. He read a lot, and he hung out with other people that were considered delinquents. And in order to get a job, he joined the circus as a musician. And he became well versed in there, never stopping his habit of studying people. He continued to watch people and see what makes them tick, what makes them go. And one of the things that he did, and this is actually where Satanism, the idea for started a little ember in his mind, was he would play music for these bawdy Saturday night shows, and then for the Sunday revivalist the next morning, and he noticed the exact same people coming to each of them. And one of his quotes, one of his most famous quotes, "On Saturday night I would see men lusting after half-naked girls dancing at the carnival. And on Sunday morning when I was playing organ for 10 show evangelists at the other end of the carnival lot, I would see these same men sitting in the pews with their wives and children, asking God to forgive them and purge them of their carnal desires. And the next Saturday they'd be back at the carnival or some other place of indulgence. I knew then that the Christian church thrives on hypocrisy and that men's carnal nature will out, no matter how much it is purged or scourged by any white light religion." That quote is even in the introduction to the Satanic Bible. So that's kind of what turned him off of the Christian faith. After he left the carnival in the 50s, he earned more money by becoming a paranormal investigator, working alongside the police. So every time the police would get a call saying, "Oh, there's a ghost in my house," they'd call him saying, "Hey, go figure this out." And he would go there and explain it wasn't a ghost, it was actually this happening or this happening. Well, that really ticked people off because they really want a ghost in their house. So he would make up stories and about spirits and stuff just to please them. And notice that people liked the fact that there might be something supernatural causing this more than the fact that it's all just natural and there isn't any supernatural force here. Which is, again, figured into what he then made a religion. He hung out with a lot of people, like psychologists, writers, and experts in different areas, and called these people his magic circle because they shared his interest in the hidden side of what moves people and what makes the world go. He studied hypnosis, psychology, and numerous different religions to find exactly what it is that drives people. Fun fact, he had a pet named Tagari, who was a Nubian lion. I just think that's cool. From these studies that I mentioned before, he created a philosophy about human nature and how it plays into life. And he brought this up to his magic circle, and they said, "Hey, you got a basis for a religion here." So he founded the Church of Satan on the April 30th, 1966, which is the annual celebration of Walpurgisnacht, which was a huge holiday in the occult and the witch culture. And one of the things he said about his religion is, "If I didn't do it myself, someone else, perhaps less qualified, would have." So he had in his head that this was just bound to happen, I'm just the one that brought it up and I did it right. He died October 29th, 1997. It is noted in the Satanic Bible that he died still believing in Satanism. There wasn't like a bedside confession or whatever. There was no repentance at the end. He died a Satanist. Alright. Core beliefs. 9 satanic statements are basically what defines Satan. We'll be looking over those and what all they entail. The 7 deadly sins are, as the Christian church defines them, greed, pride, envy, anger, gluttony, lust, and sloth. One of the parts of the Satanic Bible is he compares it to, the church. And, for instance, greed. How a lot of Christian churches now expect you to give an offering and will actually excommunicate you if you don't give an offering. That's an example of greed. Pride is one of the things that he states in there is, anybody who buys an article of clothing for a purpose other than covering his body and protecting from the elements is guilty of pride. So effectively, tees, the shirt you're wearing says Adidas on it. Does Adidas help keep you warm? But does the logo itself help you?
No.
So thus you would be guilty of pride according to LaVey. Problem with that is he doesn't take into account, and I've actually discussed this with my own home pastor, that not all pride is sinful. In fact, God wants us to have a bit of pride, because, am I right? Just stop me if I say anything wrong, by all means. There is a certain amount of pride that isn't sinful. It's
pride is our athletic philosophy here at St. Croix.
Yes.
Crusader pride.
Very much so. But what LaVey says is, the Christian church says all pride is sinful, which is a logical fallacy. It's one of those things. Envy and anger, basically, every time the church is speaking out against, for instance, homosexuality or something like that, they're obviously being angry at them. Gluttony, well, a lot of churches do picnics nowadays, and is that not gluttony in and of itself? Not to mention the fact that just eating something doesn't make you gluttonous, it just means you're eating something. Lust, you know how churches build themselves up because they want to present themselves better. Well, obviously that's got to come from lust because they see other churches building themselves up, and just it's really messed up the way he goes about his logic. And then sloth, I actually have no idea how he compares that one to the Christian church. And the benefits of each. This is interesting how he words this. Listen. A Satanist knows there is nothing wrong with being greedy, as it only means he wants more than he already has. Envy means to look with favor upon the possessions of others and to be desirous of obtaining similar things for oneself. They are the motivating forces of ambition, and without ambition, very little will be accomplished. Pausing there. He mentions that greed means you only want more than you already have. Well, to a certain extent that's true, but it's also the idea of greed means an obsession as well with getting more than you have. He doesn't mention that in the Satanic Bible. So he leads you to believe that any type of wanting is sinful. Or is sinful. And envy means to look with favor upon possessions of others and be desirous of similar things. Well, yes, it is to look with favor upon the possessions of others, but envy also includes wanting that thing. The way he makes it sound is that envy means wanting similar things when it really isn't. Envy is wanting to take what is theirs, not work for what you want yourself. So it's language like this that he uses that can be misleading. Carrying on, he goes to say, gluttony is simply eating more than you need to keep yourself alive. When you have overeaten to the point of obesity, another sin, pride, will motivate you to regain an appearance that will renew your self-respect. Do I really have to explain what's wrong with that statement? Apart from the fact that, again, gluttony is only partially defined here, and pride is not sinful in and of itself. Especially here, pride motivating you to regain an appearance that will renew your self-respect. As Christians, yes, we might say that's a little bit sinful because you're doing it for yourself and not for God, and we want to praise God with that. But, going on. The strongest instinct in every living thing is self-preservation, which brings us to the last of the 7 deadly sins, anger. I skipped sloth and lust because I didn't think that paragraph was appropriate. Which brings us to the last of the 7 deadly sins, anger. It is not in our instincts for self-preservation that is aroused when someone harms us. When we become angry enough to protect ourselves... let me try that sentence again. Is it not in our instinct for self-preservation that is aroused when someone harms us? When we become angry enough to protect ourselves from further attack? A Satanist practices the motto, if a man smite thee on one cheek, smash him on the other. Let no wrong go undressed. Be as a lion in the path. Be dangerous even in defeat. I'll be honest with you, this is the one that I struggled with the most. And Pastor Hemer will even tell you, I went and I talked with him and Pastor Leach for a pretty good portion of time saying, what's wrong with this statement? Because to a certain extent, it is right. If you are just turning the other cheek, if you're letting someone beat you up, they're just going to take advantage of that. Whereas anger is striking back and it's establishing your place and it will stop them from attacking you further. And we talked about this, and really what we as Christians need to think of is the motivating force for this. What they're doing is in fact sinful according to us because they're doing it for themselves. They're doing it for me. It's all for them, and that's all they think about. As Christians, yes, we do need a certain extent of protecting ourselves and protecting our family, but you need to think about why you're doing this. Are you really striking back because you're protecting yourself, or are you striking back because you're just angry and you want revenge? They're saying that getting revenge is protecting yourself, which doesn't equal each other. Revenge is not protection. They're two separate things. But the way LaVey writes, he makes it sound like the same thing. Any questions? Good. Alright. Good versus evil. One of the things they talk about is that nothing is inherently evil. For instance, would you say that killing someone is wrong? Wow, we have a dead crowd today. Would you say killing someone is wrong?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, what if the only thing keeping them alive is a bunch of machines? They've completely lost their mind, and they themselves are not there. Now is like unplugging their machines wrong? Is killing them wrong?
Absolutely.
We have one that says yes, and I'm not going to go into a big debate on this because this could go on for a whole class period, but the idea of good versus evil to them is that it's all subjective to the situation at hand and what's going on at hand. For instance, if someone's got a gun to my family and I have a gun in my hand, murder is wrong, but would shooting them at that point, if they're about to shoot my family, be wrong? It's this whole using those extreme situations to judge every situation on whether or not it's good or evil, and that's kind of what they do. God, the entity, a lot of people think that Satanists don't believe in God. The fact is they do, but they believe that God...
At this time, would you please excuse the JV and varsity baseball team? Thank you.
They believe that God as an entity is all the balancing forces in nature that have no concern for human suffering. So for instance, the force of gravity, the forces like the electrostatic forces, all these forces in nature that keep the world going is this entity of God. But, all it is just all these natural forces. So there is, it's not a physical God that is worried about us or cares about us. It's just what makes the world go is God as an entity. God as an idea. One of the things LeVay noticed in his study of all of the other religions, or actually why don't I ask you, how would you describe God in the Christian church? What can God do? Everything. God is the one that can choose who lives and who dies. He's the one that, he's all powerful, he's this great God up there. And in almost every religion, the God in those religions is something that is super powerful, can do anything, has complete control, or almost complete control. And LeVay knows that this is the same in almost every religion. So he formed this idea that God is just an entity that is created by man because we can't handle our own egos. We're all so egotistical, so I'm so great, that we, our divinely inspired brains can't handle this, so we need to credit this ego to some other force. So what a Satanist says is, if every other religion just says that God is something up there, that our ego is just manifested in this spiritual being, why not take our ego and be truthful about what it is, that it is our ego, and thus make ourselves God. So the idea of God is that you are basically your own God because you're your own ego. You are responsible for everything. And that's kind of what it's all based off of. The 9 satanic statement. Statement number 1. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Now there is a difference between indulgence versus compulsion. Compulsion is actually oftentimes a result of abstinence. If you stay away from something for so long, for instance, if you ever go on a diet, how many people here have dieted before? You go on a diet, what is the one thing you want most during that diet usually?
What you can't eat.
What you can't eat. That's the idea of compulsion. And as soon as you're off that diet, I don't know if it's this case with you, but what did you do the second you got off that diet?
Me?
Yes.
I indulged.
You were compulsive and yes, you did indulge, but you were rapidly indulging in this thing because you couldn't have it. And that's compulsion. Satanism says that if you indulge yourself constantly, if you had been having all those treats and stuff throughout that time you were on your diet, you probably wouldn't have attacked it so much at the end of that time. That's the idea of indulgence. If you indulge yourself in these sins, if you indulge yourself in what is pleasing to you, then that will avoid compulsion, and you, by avoiding abstinence, you avoid compulsion. Indulgence in some things, not others. So this is something interesting. They say that they love sin, that they're okay with all sins, but yet they also say that some things are still inherently wrong. For instance, let me try this again. They do have morals. They respect other people, because if I'm rude to you without you giving me a reason to be rude to you, I am now infringing on your capability to enjoy life, and that's wrong in their minds. Unless, of course, you have done something to me that you deserve it, in which case I'll strike back and attack you. So they have morals, which is interesting because they believe in these sins, yet they have morals, so it kind of goes against itself. But that's beside the point. Benefits of like indulgence is the gratification, the satisfaction. Like I said, you know, you're not gonna feel a compulsive need to do something. You're just gonna enjoy life, and you get to have that satisfaction. Statement 2. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. This is what I was talking about earlier with this whole idea of all religions are created. So like God is just some created being, because the spiritual pipe dreams here refers to like our divinely inspired nature and how we need to look for the supernatural and everything, like what he noticed with humans. So he said, well, if everyone just has all these weird pipe dreams, then why don't we just try and face what is actually real, which is just nature and the natural way of things.
Just
So,
to
you know,
clarify for your classmates, I
Yes.
found in the other sets that when we talked about that term pipe dreams, most people didn't know what that phrase meant. So pipe dreams are,
I'm assuming basically just like stemming from the idea of pipe smoking.
no,
No.
a pipe dream is a phrase that's used to describe dreams that are like way out there, unattainable.
Okay.
You know, like a pipe dream might be a wish in the sky, like, I hope that my hair turns purple. Well, your hair not's gonna turn purple, you know? And so he says spiritual pipe dreams are this idea that you're gonna go to heaven someday, you're not gonna go to heaven someday, come on. And so that's what he would say. The Christian church is all about the pipe dreams.
Gotcha. I had the completely wrong definition. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
So speaking of heaven, the idea that he says is heaven is like, for instance, he's looking at all these religions and he notices that heaven is a tool that's used by a lot of churches to get their members to keep coming back. And it also justifies poverty. Like, oh, it's okay that you're poor, you'll be in heaven someday. Oh, I'm sorry that your friend died, but it's okay, she's in heaven. And he notices this and he goes, he basically thinks, why live just to die? Why spend my whole life like doing all this stuff according to my religion just in hopes that after I die I'm going to be in some great other place? So what he says is, that's stupid, because what if there's not a heaven? What if that's not there at the end? Where will you be? You will have lived your whole life like hindering yourself and not enjoying life fully because you're just living to die. So what he says is that you fulfill your ego on this earth by like indulging. For instance, there's actually a whole chapter called Life After Death in this Satanic Bible, and one of the things he says is the Satanist believes in complete gratification of his ego. Only if a person's own ego is fulfilled can he afford to be kind to others without robbing himself of his self-respect. Braggarts only brag because of the need to satisfy their impoverished egos. It is ego which makes a person refuse to die. Young children have enthusiasm because of their ego. Self-sacrifice is not encouraged by the satanic religion. Therefore, unless death comes as an indulgence because of extreme circumstances, which makes the termination of life a welcome relief, suicide is frowned upon by the satanic religion. What I find hilarious about this section, which is entitled Life After Death, is I basically gave you a summary of what the whole chapter is. Did you notice anything about that pertaining to the title Life After Death? I guess you're right. No, exactly. They never talk about life after death.
Why bother?
Exactly. But they say that we believe in life after death because if you fulfill your ego, you will refuse to die. Not taking into account that everyone is going to die. It doesn't matter how fulfilled your ego is, you're crushed by a 10-ton semi-truck, you're going to die. Let's face it. So I think it's another thing, it's just a fallacy in a sense, because he says we believe in life after death, but there's not one. But if you fulfill your ego, well then you'll refuse to die. And yeah. And it's comical in a sense to me. The third statement, Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Goes right along with the second statement, you know. We believe in there it is. You know, they believe in not living for heaven, you know, just being aware of what's around you. For instance, this is a chair. It is not something that has been created by a god. It is a chair, and that's all it is. That's the idea of undefiled wisdom. Another reason why they also don't encourage drugs within the church. A lot of people think that, if it's indulgence, drugs are sinful, why wouldn't you? Well, because they also believe in undefiled wisdom. And using drugs inhibits your brain, which defiles that wisdom. Just another interesting misconception about Satanists. The fourth statement, Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. This is again going along with the pride and the anger and self-preservation, because if you're extremely generous to people that aren't grateful, then you're just going to destroy yourself in some way or another. So he's saying, don't waste your love on ingrates, because why bother? And an example, I don't know if you guys are on the internet or see the news on the internet, but have any of you seen that video of those people who rented out their house to a few people, expecting them to just stay there overnight, and these people ended up trashing that place? Any of you see that? No. Basically, a couple of renters rented out their whole house and left for the weekend, and these people threw a giant, huge party with a lot of drugs involved and trashed the place for over $75,000 worth of damage. And that's kind of the idea that they're saying here is, why would you waste your love on people like that when you could just be kind to those who actually deserve it, who are nice to you? Their golden rule is do unto others as they do unto you, not as you would have them do unto you, because if you do that and then they don't be nice to you in return, it just kind of destroys you emotionally on the inside, and that is not indulging, that's not enjoying life, so why would you bother? And that's how it kind of betters you as a person. Self-preservation, it's, kind of self-explanatory again. And then, who deserves it? So, let's say that you just met someone on the street. You don't know if they're going to be nice to you, if they're going to be rude to you. Now, how do you treat them? According to this point of view. Anybody? Exactly. How do you know who deserves kindness or who doesn't deserve kindness if you don't know the people? So that's another thing that it's kind of interesting when you think about, because they have no way of telling, hey, is this person going to be nice to me? Is he not? Should I treat him kindly? Should I not? So how do they make that judgment call? Just another thought of that. Statement 5. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Again, going back to the anger, turning the other cheek. I've got the quote up there, if a man smite thee on one cheek, smash him on the other, because you just let him beat the pulp out of you, you're going to get the pulp beaten out of you, generally speaking. And this is also a fulfillment of pride, because if you strike back, if you get revenge, then you have conquered over what has previously destroyed you. For instance, how many sports people do we have in here? I'm assuming all of you. Is there any one team that you face in your particular sport that is always beating you, always so much better than you?
The Chicago Blackhawks.
Chicago Blackhawks. How successful would you feel if you finally crushed the Chicago Blackhawks?
Awesome.
Exactly. That's the exact idea here, is that if getting vengeance on someone, hey, they hurt me, I'm going to crush them back, and then that fulfills your pride. You would feel awesome. Not to mention, okay, clarify here, it is not a sin to destroy another sports team in the game, so long as you know. But what they're talking about is getting actual revenge, which goes against some of their other beliefs, which I'll talk about in a bit, but we'll get to that a little bit later. This is number 6. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. First of all, what in the heck is a psychic vampire? Psychic vampire is, I'm not sure if I'm the only one who knows this feeling here, but I'm sure that some of you at least do. Do any of you have that friend, acquaintance, anybody who every time you're around them, it seems that they just drain you of energy? Who the very thought of them makes you feel sick or dreading something that, you know what I'm talking about? You're always giving to them, and you sense that you're getting nothing in return, but at the same time you don't want to stop giving them because they make you feel guilty if you do, things like that. Okay, you know people like that. That is the idea of what a psychic vampire is. And this statement is just saying, why would you be concerned for them when all they're going to do is take from you and make you unhappy. So the idea there is that you don't want to be concerned for them, because then you can achieve true happiness because you will have them out of the way. And they've got a whole couple chapters on how to deal with them, which is basically treating them with their own medicine, getting back at them with revenge. It's more of these ideas of vengeance and things. And that's what that whole statement is. So if you are kind of starting to see a lot of these statements tie in together, where he could really just shorten it down to 3 or 4 of them. But he's got 9. 7. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those who walk on all fours, who, because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, has become the most vicious animal of all. Alright, so this is going into like the idea of animal instinct. If you see animals, what do they do when they get attacked? They fight back. What do they do when they see another animal of the opposite gender? What do they do if, anywho, you get the attack statements, got the 5th one up here for some reason. Then just turn the other cheek, they've got the whole, if a man smite thee on one cheek, smash him on the other. Keep going. The responsibilities that could serve for psychic vampires. We talked about what psychic vampires were. Man is just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development. We talked a lot about that. All the so-called sins, they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. We talked about how the sins were created by the Christian church, and that since man is just another animal, we should follow our animal instinct. And don't know how much I covered this topic, but the way a Satanist will deal with sin is one of the things he writes in there is that if Satanist feels sorry for what he's done, then he'll change his ways and he has no business confessing it to someone. Because if you confess it to someone or you confess it to God, who isn't even up there, then all you're doing is disgracing yourself. You're tearing down your own image, and that just doesn't do you any good. So why bother? If you feel bad about it, you're going to fix it. So just go forward and fix it. If you don't feel bad about it, then you know, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this. And you just keep doing it. Then you still have no business confessing it to someone. So the whole idea behind that is there's no forgiveness because you'll either take care of it or you'll just enjoy it, and it doesn't matter. Finally, the 9th satanic statement. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. This is basically saying, without Satan, the church wouldn't stand. If there was no devil, the Christian church wouldn't be there. Which makes sense, because Satan is like the scapegoat. Everything bad, all these sins come from Satan. You know, God can't possibly be responsible for that. It's Satan's fault, according to a Satanist. This is what they would say. So Satan's like the scapegoat. And one of the things that they do in the Church of Satan is they'll actually, you know, hey, he's been scapegoat for so long, but he's the best friend of the Christian church. He's the one that's helped them so much. Why don't we just worship him as not necessarily a spiritual entity, but just this idea of sin in general? Because without him, we would have no reason to go to church. Without Satan, we don't need forgiveness. Without these sins that we struggle with every day, there's no need to go back to church for forgiveness because we already know we're going to heaven. We're perfect. So that's where they come from, is like, he's the best friend of the Christian church, because without this idea of Satan, then the Christian church would have nothing to blame our sins on, and thus would not be in business. On the Church of Satan website, these aren't in the Satanic Bible, but it is on the website. They have the 11 Satanic Rules of the Earth. So don't give your, and they all kind of follow the 9 Satanic Statements, or some aspect of Satanism in a way. For instance, do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked. Well, because if the other person doesn't like your opinions, then that hurts you, and why hurt yourself? So don't, you know, it just makes sense in that way. Don't tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them. Same idea. When in another's lair, show him respect, or else do not go there. So the idea behind that one is, if you're going to someone's house, you should respect them. You should like them as a person. They're actually, Satanists are very moral people when it gets down to it, because they respect others unless this other person gives them no reason to respect them. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I feel like I'm elaborating. I'll just keep going. If a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy. The idea behind that is you're showing him hospitality. If he's being rude to you back, you have no more reason to treat him nicely. So treat him just how he treats you, as it says in the fourth satanic statement. Do not make sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal. I find the term mating signal just hilarious in this context, but the idea behind that is don't rape people, because not only is that illegal, which would harm you eventually because the law would catch up to you and you would end up in prison, which doesn't gratify you in any way, but it also takes away from someone else's happiness. And since they're all about pleasing yourself, you don't want to take away someone else's chance to please themselves, because that would be wrong. Do not take that which does not belong to you unless it is a burden to the other person and he cries out to be relieved. I kind of find this one comical because it's very open to interpretation on, well, what does it mean to cry out for something to be relieved? Like, maybe the way Andy's sitting makes me think, well, he wants me to take his laptop from him. What exactly is that saying? Just comment on that, I found that funny. Acknowledge the power of magic if you have employed it successfully to obtain your desires. If you deny the power of magic after having called upon it with success, you will lose all that you have obtained. We'll go over more about magic when I get to the rituals. And do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. So basically that's saying, if I don't like sports, for instance, I'm not going to join sports because that wouldn't gratify me. But if I do, I shouldn't complain about it because I'm not needing to do it. So it's effectively, don't subject yourself, first of all, to something that you don't need to. And if you do, don't complain about it, just do something about it. Because that, complaining about it won't do you any good. Doing something about it will. It'll gratify you emotionally and physically. Do not harm little children. Did we go over the idea of children in the satanic religion? So they kind of hold them sacred because they are pretty much the purest form of Satanism, because they follow their instincts. A little child just does what he wants, and so they hold them with high respect. So the ninth one is don't harm little children. Do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. Same idea, because animals, all they do is follow their instinct. Don't harm them because they're practically sacred, unless of course you're attacked or for food, in which case you're doing it to gratify yourself or to protect yourself, because that will benefit you. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he does not stop, destroy him. Self-explanatory. Alright, I have no idea what's on this one. The symbol of Satanism is the, I believe it's called a Baphomet. And basically what it is the sigil of Baphomet, or the goat of Mendes. The pentagram, the star here, is a symbol representing mankind and just humankind itself. The orientation, the fact that it's pointing downwards, is considered infernal by Eliphas Levi, was an old philosopher that said, hey, this is considered evil, and everyone else said, oh, what's evil? And that's kind of where it came from. The goat is not, some people say it's Satan himself. The Satanist won't come out and say that it's Satan himself, but it is the hidden one, he who abides in all things, the soul of all phenomena is how it's defined by Wikipedia. Basically, the way I saw it is, the goat is an animal, and since animals they follow their instincts. Plus, there's a lot of symbolism behind the goat being connected to devils and demons and stuff. Lots of stuff throughout history. The Hebrew, these characters on the side, spell out Leviathan, which in Bible times was a monstrous biblical sea creature. It was a symbol of the abyss and hidden truth. And Baphomet, the reason it's called the sigil of Baphomet, is one of the things it's based off of is this. It is an old god that the Knights of Templar worshipped. It was an idol that a lot of them worshipped. And that's kind of what this symbol is based off of, is that idol. Alright. Religious holidays. First of all, the most important holiday in the satanic religion is your own birthday. Because, like we talked about, you are effectively God. You have made yourself God. So while Christianity will celebrate Jesus' birthday because Jesus was born, and other religions will celebrate their God's birthday, well, you are your own God. So the most important date to you is your birthday, because that's when you got the chance to come in here and to enjoy life, and so that's one of the most important ones. talked about that. Awesome. Well, Purgisnacht is actually an old pagan and witches festival. And it was the... Oh, I stopped organizing it. Ah, here we go. Yeah. Based on Saint Walpurgis, who was a famous Catholic. She traveled with nuns and was commemorated on May 1st. It's also the most important pagan festival. I don't know how those are connected, but it's just an important pagan festival that was also the date that it was founded. Satanism was founded. Halloween, of course, it's the time when the spirits of the dead, the demons, the witches would all come out, and young people did rituals to determine their marriage partners, and it's all about having fun, effectively, and demons and stuff, which is kind of flies in the face of Christianity, which I also noticed is an underlying theme in Satanism, is almost everything flies in the face of Christianity. And the solstices are the summer and winter solstice, and the equinox are the spring and fall. It basically marks the changing of the season, marks a new time, and it means that, your time on this earth is continually going on, and so much for that. Magic, this is where it gets fun, and really messed up. Let's get into it. Lesser magic. Lesser magic is basically something I see practiced all the time, even at school. The idea behind lesser magic is you use, they've got a few different definitions of specific things, but you use, I just looked at the word children and thought Christian. I don't have it on there. You use your own appeal or different types of appeals to get people to do something. So when you were in band and that one stupid sophomore is whining at that other kid, please do my homework, come on, and being all flirtatious with him, she's using her sexual appeal to try and get him to do something. Maybe one of the other things, like for older people especially, the grandmother type of appeal, making cookies, the Hansel and Gretel witch basically. You're using the aromas of the cookies, the kindness, and it's basically using all of those things to get somebody to do something for you. They just call it magic because that makes it more fun. Greater magic includes rituals, and it's basically trying to change things using a symbolic ritual form, and it's we will talk about more of that later. And the Black Mass. I'm sure when you guys think of Satanism, you probably have heard of the Black Mass. How many people haven't heard of the Black Mass? Good. We're off to a good start. So the Black Mass, I'm sure you guys picture kind of this idea of, the general idea in society is it's a protective pentagram is drawn in the floor around the ritual. There's a naked woman holding a black candle made from fat of unbaptized babies, and a chalice with the blood or the urine of a prostitute. It also could be wine laced with drugs. An inverted cross hangs above the altar. Ergot-laden bread or black stained turnip, blessed by rubbing in places, is consumed. Ergot is a poisonous mushroom known to cause stillbirths and other problems. Invocations to Satan and various demons are followed by prayers or psalms chanted backwards or interspersed with obscenities. The devil may appear, which is usually a man dressed with a goat head on his shoulders. And if you're lucky, you might even get a slaughtering of a baby involved, followed by a giant orgy filled with disgusting things to profane Christianity, usually done on top of a cross. That's effectively what the Black Mass is. So have you guys heard of it or kind of know that's the general idea? And that's kind of the ritual that defines Satanism? Well, if that's true, then the Christian church has worked perfectly at getting you guys to think that. In fact, there's a whole chapter in the Satanic Bible about the Black Mass and about how it is the most disgusting thing even to a Satanist. Because any sort of ritual they find redundant, because that's effectively what all rituals are, is they're just repetitive or parodies of other types of rituals. So the idea behind a Satanist is if they were to perform any kind of Black Mass, A, it wouldn't involve all those disgusting things because most of them fly in the face of even Satanism, or B, it would be just a small little mockery of their own religion to bring themselves an emotional gratification. For instance, if you're coming from the Christian church and you got bashed all the time in the Christian church, you got made fun of and treated like you were dirt, you might just make fun of a Christian ritual because that might make you feel a little bit better, if that helps you. If not, then you have no reason to do it. The reason that the Black Mass became popular is because it was done by pseudo-Satanists. As we talked about earlier, pseudo-Satanists are not actual Satanists. They're people who claim to worship the devil, and they're the ones that get all the public attention. In fact, most of the actual satanic rituals will take place in private, and very few of them are actually, it's impossible to find pictures of them that aren't staged, because you just don't. They take place in private because they don't want it to be public. So that's just one of the things that I thought was interesting, is the Black Mass actually has no place in the Church of Satan, and it's used more by Christians that are trying to scare people away from Satanism than by Satanists themselves. Just a little interesting thing that I thought was important. Alright, magic is defined as the change in situations or events in accordance with one's will, which would, using normally accepted methods, be unchangeable. So basically, it's moving your butt and getting it in gear to change something that you usually wouldn't be changed. The look, as we talked about, is can be different. It can be used in different ways to get different reactions to try and get people to do something for you. There are 3 different main looks. The sex, which is sex appeal. Girl dresses up really, really pretty to get some guy to do something for her. Guy takes off his shirt and rubs suntan lotion on his face to get the girl to do something for her, for him, whatever. Sentiment would be like the grandmother figure, or that. Wonder is the one I didn't talk about. It's basically, I don't know how to describe this. It's that kind of weird type of person. That hobo that's always on the street that always makes you think, what is up with him? But you can't quite put your finger on it. You guys know, sort of? No? Okay, wonderful. You guys are so dead tonight, it's unbelievable. Basically, it's the whole thing about wonder is that it's being so strange that you just pull people's attention. You get them to do things for you that way. And those are 3 different types of look. Greater magic. Here's where we get into rituals. We're going to be talking about the steps of a ritual later and what exactly those accomplish. There are different types of rituals as well. Sex, compassion, and destruction. Sex rituals, the whole basic idea behind that is you're trying to get someone to have sex with you, but it's all done symbolically. Usually these rituals are alone or with a group, not involving that person. But the idea is that you are affecting their mind by doing this ritual because it's all magic and stuff. And we'll talk a little more about that and how comical in nature it is. Compassion is when you want to, if you really love someone or if you want to wish a blessing on them, you do a compassion ritual to basically wish blessing on this person. And destruction is effectively you destroy someone. And these are done in formal ceremonies, which we'll talk about. Emotionally induced energy is not intellectual. Again, I'll talk a little more about that. Human sacrifice. It can be done 2 ways, by a lesser magic. And actually, we've got some time. Who wants to volunteer to help me with a demonstration on this? Bratwurst, I see a hand raised. Come on up. Awesome. We'll be right back. Are there scissors anywhere? Old 10 will have to do. So human sacrifice is really easy. Let's back up a little bit. There we go. Awesome. Bratwurst, I hope nothing good happens to you. I hope you die in a hole somewhere alone. Goodbye. You've been sacrificed. Yeah, that's literally all it is. Fun thing. They have a whole chapter about this, basically telling you it's all symbolic. Don't actually kill people. Whole chapter of the Satanic Bible will tell you this. But it's the idea behind that is I would then believe in my magic abilities, and if something bad does happen to him, great, it worked. If not, then I know that something bad will happen to him, and eventually he'll die, so it must have worked. Which is kind of funny, coming from a religion that's all about intellect and non-magical, non-supernatural forces. It can also be done ritualistically, which is the destruction ritual, which, again, is everything is symbolic. Everything about their magic is symbolic, but if you believe it, it will happen because it's magic. Does this make sense to anyone? Anyone does it make sense to? Head nod, shake, something. Good. Doesn't make sense to me either. Wonderful. We're off to a good start. Purely symbolic, I talked about that. Alright, components of a ritual. The intellectual decompression chamber is where you go in and you tell yourself, nothing from the outside world is going to affect this. I'm going in just to perform this ritual, which is basically where they will tell themselves that this isn't actually, real, but it is. It's where they desensitize themselves, thinking that what I'm doing is actually intelligent, but it's not. Does this make sense to anybody? Good, because it really doesn't. Basically what they do is, whereas they view it as Christians, we go through our whole lives thinking, well, God is real, God can help me, God is this. They know that's not true, but for the sake of rituals, because there's a part of the human nature that likes to have this supernatural help, they will believe that momentarily. So they go into the supernatural mindset momentarily for the ritual, and then leave it afterwards, and that's all done through the intellectual decompression chamber. The ingredients, you need a desire. A ritual without a desire is worthless. Like, for instance, if you're doing a sex ritual, you need to actually want someone specifically. You can't just hope, someone has sex with me eventually. No, you need to want somebody, or else there's no point in doing it. You can't practice a ritual because you wouldn't have the actual desire. Timing, they talk a lot about timing and when's a good time to do something because this will affect their mind more and blah, blah, blah. Imagery, the imagery helps you get more into the mood, into the mindset, and it will help make your magic stronger because your desire is increased by the imagery. Direction, you need to be able to focus your thoughts in one single direction. And the balance factor, since we're on the topic of the sex rituals, balance factor is basically knowing your own limitations. For instance, I'm a scrawny white kid. There's no way in the world I'm going to perform a sex ritual hoping that someday I might have sex with Nicki Minaj. Not happening. It's the idea is knowing your limitations and not trying to reach for the stars, because if you reach for the stars, you're not going to get there and you will disappoint yourself. Whereas if you go for something that might be plausible, you might get somewhere and that might gratify you. Clothing, the men in a ritual usually wear dark robes and masks. The masks are to hide their face so that they can be open with their emotions without having to fear embarrassment from the others. So like if you're doing a compassion ritual and you feel like you need to cry, you can do that without having to worry about that. The women will be scantily clad and or fully nude. The nuder the better is what they say, because the idea behind that is that will get the men sexually motivated and it'll get their desire stronger, thus increasing their magic and making their magic stronger. So that's the idea behind that. It's disgusting, I know. The language is interesting. They use English, but sometimes the keys, which are like the Apostles' Creed or like the prayers for us, the keys will be recited in Enochian, which is supposedly a magic language. And is the volume turned up on here? And this is the song about Crowley reciting the first Enochian key. So if you can hear, it's got more of a magic sound to it, a ritualistic sound to it. I wish I copied down exactly what the English words are, but it's basically this whole saying you are blah blah blah, and this, so glorifying him. And that's in the ancient Enochian language. Cool stuff. Alright, there's 13 steps to it. One is dress for the ritual. Yeah. The second is assemble devices for ritual. So they have very specific things that I didn't bother memorizing. Like the altar should go on the north side, your candle should go here, your bell goes here. Everything like that. You've got a lot of different things that are all symbolic and stuff. If a woman uses the altar, she now takes her position. They will often use a naked woman as an altar because the idea is the original altar was made of flesh. So, if you can get flesh for your altar, it's great. If not, you just use a table. And she takes the circumcision, head pointing south, feet pointing north, because in their religion, they picture the different princes of hell in different directions, cardinal directions. Purification of the air is by the ringing of the bell. The bell that they use is a small, piercing, but like high-pitched bell. The invocation of Satan and infernal names, which follow, are now read aloud by the priest. Participants will repeat each of the infernal names after it is said by the priest. They have like 72 names for all these different demons. It's crazy. Drink from the chalice. They got a chalice. Turning counterclockwise, the priest points with a sword to each of the cardinal points of the compass and calls forth the respective princes of hell. Satan from the south, Lucifer from the north, Belial from the north, or Lucifer from the east, Belial from the north, and Leviathan from the west. Next one, you perform the benediction with the phallus if one is used. The phallus is a number 9. Priest reads aloud appropriate invocation for respective ceremony, lust, compassion, or destruction. So there's a different invocation for each of those.
At this time, please excuse the varsity baseball team.
In the case of a personalized ritual, this step is extremely important. Solitude is compatible with the expressing of most secret desires, and no attempt to hold back should be made in acting out, verbalizing. Basically, it says that you should let your full emotions out, because that will increase your magic and it'll make it a lot better. 11. If requests are written, they are now read aloud by the priest and then burn in the flames of the appropriate candle. Shem Hamfarash and Hail Satan is said after each request. Shem Hamfarash, I actually looked this up, is apparently a very old name for, I believe it's an old name for God, if I'm correct. It's in the original Hebrew, it's like a 72-letter name for God. And
I don't recognize it.
Really?
It's like Shemham. And then, I don't know.
I believe I might have taken a note on this, but I probably didn't. Of course I did, because I was going to memorize that.
Oh, okay, so you've got shame is the name for, is the word name. I'm not sure how Farash is.
Well, basically it's the name of a white light religion's God, and a lot of people were wondering why they use that. Well, while that one I believe represents 72 names for God or something, it also, a lot of people think, well, there's exactly in the Satanic Bible 72 infernal names, so that could be that's why. Regardless, after each one, the priest would say Shem Hamfarash, Hail Satan, and everyone else would be Shem Hamfarash, Hail Satan. Appropriate Enochian or key is now read by the priest. What you listened to earlier was an Enochian key. As evidence of the participation of allegiance to the power of darkness, so a lot like our Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed. Ringing of the bell as pollutionary, and then the words so it is done are spoken by the priest. So they end it with the ringing of the bell and so it is done. Go back into the intellectual decompression chamber, and now you're back in the real world. Alright, upon permission, it's a non-graphic setup of what a ritual would look like. I can skip it, it's up to you.
Did you clear it with Pastor Hebron?
I didn't clear it, no.
Then just skip it, and if he
Skip it?
wants you to watch it, then you can.
Okay, definitely need to skip to slide 37. Hierarchy. The hierarchy in the Church of Satan is a few of them. Registered member, no degree. Basically that means you paid your fee to get into the church, but all you are is a member. One of the things about the church is, fun thing actually about joining the church, you need to be an adult, because they hold children in such high regards, and because since it's founded on a distaste for the Christian church, one of the things that they notice is that one of the things that a Christian church does a lot of is it raises kids with this whole, this is right, God is real, and it'll effectively brainwash kids into believing that God is real and this is what is true. They don't want to do that. They want children to make their own decision in the world. So they don't allow anyone under the age of 18 to officially join the Christian church. They've got the Christian church, the Church of Satan. That's a very bad thing to screw up. They've got a frequently asked questions page for any young person that wants to know more about Satanism, but they will not allow anyone under the age of 18 to join because they hold children in such high regard. However, they'll also tell children, if your parents don't want you worshiping Satanism, don't do it. Because
Please dismiss the girls' golf team. Thank you.
Because you don't want to cause problems for yourself that don't need to be there. So they're very, they worry a lot about a lot about the people in the church and about the kids. I actually looked into the cost of it because in order to be able to watch or be part of any of the rituals, you need to be a member of that, and I thought it would be good education. But anywho, it costs $208 to get in. It's an $8 fee plus the $200 entry fee, because what they do is they keep all of your information private. They don't release it to anyone because they know that Satanism is frowned upon in the outside world. So unless you have said, I want to be a spokesperson, they'll keep it all private, but they also keep you in the loop of where a ritual is happening. Usually it takes place in private homes and stuff. So that's basically the benefits of becoming an actual member. Active member, if the priest knows, hey, this person's actually doing a lot for the church, you get to be a first-degree Satanist. Witcher Warlock is second degree, you start doing all the rituals and stuff, you start getting into that. Priests and priestesses are gonna be third degree, and they're kind of the spokespeople, along with the Magistra and Magister, fourth degree, and the Magus, Magia and Magus, which is the fifth degree. The Order of Nine, which is kind of the overarching, like, rulers, they kind of keep, do everything within the Church of Satan, are made up of priestesses and priests. I don't know how that logic fits in, why these ones are the overarching rulers and not these ones, but that's how it works. Alright.
Just so you know, we have about 7 minutes left, so do you have to get a quiz in today too?
What?
We have about 7 minutes left. Do you have to get a quiz in today too?
Yeah, I'll hurry through this. Alright, I was going to make this more participative, but we're running out of time. Number one, a logical thing that may well be the biggest turnoff of this whole religion, at least to me, is, because a lot of the other things, yeah, it's got a lot of logical fallacies, but so does the Bible. Let's face it, the whole idea of God wants everyone to get to heaven, but yet he hardened Pharaoh's hearts. You can talk through that all you want, still won't make sense to me. A lot of stuff in there, too, that doesn't make sense to me. But if there's one thing that will make me say I'm never doing this religion, it's definitely this. Some things are considered taboo or sinful by Satanism, like, harming small children and doing all the other illegal stuff that or doing drugs and stuff. But the way they deal with sin is either feel bad or revel in your guilt or, enjoy it. So how can you do something that is against your religion when drugs and harming children are against your religion, yet the way you deal with it is in accordance to your own religion at the same time? The one most illogical thing that, if it did it for me, and I hope it does it for all of you, I hope you guys weren't considering it in the first place, but if you were, I hope that this does turn you off of it, is that the way they deal with sin is absolutely, positively illogical, and yet they say there's no sin, but they make some things taboo, they make some things sinful. And it's just way too much for me to wrap my head around. How to respond? Alright, Angela. If I were to tell you that the God you worship is a sexist, racist, murderous jerk who is just intent on harming us, what would you respond?
Everything our God does or puts in our lives is out of love to strengthen our faith.
First thing you did, and effectively, was you kind of got defensive about it, right? You defended your faith. So, keep in mind, these people are worshiping Satan. Satan is a symbol for sin. So the first thing you should not ever do, don't attack sin. Don't look at them and say, you're leading a sinful life and you're going to hell for that. Because you know what the first thing they'll do? They'll either get defensive or tune you out, or very likely both. So why would you attack their God that's not going to get you anywhere? What I'd recommend is you also keep in mind who you're talking to. Most of these people probably were raised in the Christian faith. They probably had a lot of problems with the Christian faith. In fact, Satanism is built around a hatred towards Christianity. So keep in mind, you're probably talking to someone who's going to be the hardest to witness to of all the other religions out there, in my opinion. One of the first things I do is dispel some stereotypes or beliefs about Christianity. For instance, one of my friends, he's not a Satanist, he's an atheist, but was attacked a lot in the Catholic Church because he was a homosexual. One of the first things I did wasn't even talk about how homosexuality is a sin. It's one of the first things I did was say, hey, not all of us are like that. Some of us, like me, I'm okay with still being your friend. I'll still be there for you, I'm not going to hate you or judge you because of this. So And that's kind of what their background is coming from. They're coming from churches that made them feel like crap, made them feel terrible, just ripped on them probably nonstop. So you might want to start with that, saying, hey, we're not all like this, like you may have had, but do so in a calm way. Don't say, well, we're not like that. That'll just make them tune you out right away. Try talking about life after death without focusing on that being the reason for life. One of the things we talked about was that they don't like Christianity because it's all about living just to die. Your whole life is living in preparation for death. You don't want to make it sound like that, but you might want to mention it because they don't have a life after death. As much as they have a chapter on it, it doesn't actually talk about life after death. So it might be a good thing to bring up. And don't harp on good works, because then you'll sound self-centered and that'll be just another reason for them to attack you, like, hey, you're showing pride, that's a sin. And they'll turn and they'll like immediately tune you out again. And focus on the joy in life rather than living a pure life. So again, it goes along with good works or the reason for life. They are doing this because they want to satisfy themselves and gratify themselves. So probably one of the best ways is focusing on the fact that I am happy here. I enjoy life. And rather than saying, well, I'm living like this because I'm getting to heaven later on. Alright? Fun picture. It's a picture of Marilyn Manson with Anton LaVey. Just because I can. Any other questions? That is the end of the presentation, so any questions? No? Got it? Alright. Time for the quiz.